Okay, so I will call the City Council Ordinance Subcommittee to order, April 12th, 6 p.m. We're all present. I do have, I don't know if, did we approve the minutes of the meeting before you guys met?
We did.
Okay, so we're all set, we're all square with me,
Yeah.
okay. And I don't, Jessica, are you here to speak to anything?
Well, I'm here for your new business and just wanted to check in on some of your continuing business and
Okay.
just trying to coordinate efforts, that's all.
Sure, well, let's talk, then let's start with the new business.
So, we need to hold a public hearing on the seasonal cottage community by June 10th.
Okay.
And so, looking at available, typically we try to coordinate with the planning board,
Right.
so we have the joint public hearing. I think May 2nd is out because of the legal notification requirements, I don't think I can do it in time.
Okay.
So either May 16th or June 6th would be the two dates.
Okay, let me just check.
So whatever works for the
Is
three
there a
of you in
decision
terms of
that's
those dates.
required
Hmm?
by, is there a decision required by a certain date or a
Yes.
or a hearing by a certain?
You need to have, the hearing
'Cause
has
the-
to be held by June 10th. You don't need
By
to make a
June-
decision, but you need to hold, it's
Right,
scheduled.
'cause the clock
Hearing
has
by
started.
June 10th.
The clock has started.
Yeah, and so that means that June 10th.
So you could either do May 16th or June 6th.
June 6th. I'm. May 16th is my wife's birthday. So that's probably not gonna work, but June 6th is fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I will, file the legal notifications and get that all set.
It's a joint meeting?
That's a joint public hearing.
Joint public hearing with the planning board, so I'll put it on their agenda for that time, and, do you want any briefing on it now, ahead of time? so
Sure.
that you
I mean, I
understand?
kinda know about. I mean, from what I
So-
read and what I heard.
So we were approached, it all started because I was approached by an individual who bought Touchstone Farm on
Yes.
West Street. And she was interested in developing, kind of a cottage community for rentals. The only category that we had at the time was campground. Where campground is listed under the table of uses, it's listed as a community facilities, and under that definition means that it has to be a nonprofit. She
Oh.
wanted to not have it be a nonprofit, and she wanted to be a for-profit business, she wanted to pay taxes, she didn't wanna go under that
Right.
nonprofit status. So we've been working with her for several months to develop zoning that would kind of be a niche. I think the fact that we don't have any lodging in East Hampton, this makes sense. She
Yeah.
wants to turn it into, cottages that would be available for rental in the summer. We've set some dates so they're not year-round. I'm just concerned about people like moving in and,
Oh, yeah.
having it be kind
Squatting.
of like, like making it like this illegal subdivision.
Right.
So there's some very strict language in there about dates to make sure that somebody's not gonna come in there. But she would be able to rent it throughout the winter for 1 week stints. So she,
Right.
somebody wanted to come and do cross-country skiing or something like that,
Sure.
it would still work.
Okay.
So it's, I think, finding, we're not going to be attracting a hotel, we're not going to
Right.
attract, we're too far off the beaten path when it comes to transportation. So promoting a type of lodging above and beyond the illegal Airbnbs that are throughout the community.
Mhm.
We have 2 bed and breakfasts, 1 shut down, so, I think that there's a niche for this, and she wants to create a really beautiful, 12 cottages. So, but the planning board, as we developed this, thought above and beyond just this one parcel, we were looking at other parcels, where does it make sense?
Sure.
And we wanted to make sure that it was not a campground, it was not RV trailer park, it was, specifically for these cottages.
Right.
So that's the background on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I had heard, and it seemed like it was an interesting idea for people that wanted to come to East Hampton and take advantage of restaurants and the art things that were
Yep.
happening.
Yep.
And our beautiful.
Do they already have the cottages, or she's going to build?
No,
some?
so she's waiting for the zoning to get in place, she's getting her financing in place, she's getting her engineers in place, so she's slowly moving along with a business partner, so, she's trying to develop her business plans around how the zoning is being
Mhm.
framed, and it's been this back and forth conversation. She's been in attendance to every planning board meeting that we've discussed this, and we've taken her input very seriously, so, but again, wanting to make sure it's not just crafted for her and her individually and thinking bigger picture.
Yeah.
So, I think you have copies of it, you've received it through the council process, but if you need me to email you anything, just let me know.
Okay. Now, as far as, so we'll have the joint public hearing with the planning board on June 6th.
June 6th.
Do we need to set anything?
Well, then you'll vote, but depending on how long it takes.
Our recommendation.
There'll be a recommendation, you guys vote
After
out
this,
of-
we have 30 days? 60 days?
I have to remember, I have to
I
go
don't
back and look
remember
at the
either.
zoning laws again, I can't remember off the top of my head, but yeah, you'll vote it out of committee and then you can schedule your own public hearing for the fall city council.
Okay.
So what districts are you proposing?
It is within, R80, R40, and R30. 35, sorry. R35. So it's residential zones.
I think we
From
got
memory, are we talking a certain size parcel? Minimum size?
Minimum 5 acres.
Do you know how many 5-acre parcels there are that would qualify in the 3 different
I've looked,
zones?
I looked at one point, there's, a good handful, but not a ton.
I can't,
there's-
off the top of my head, I can't think of another one, so I mean, I'm
Yeah,
sure
yeah.
there must be some.
No, there are,
yeah.
especially in
But
the
a
R,
few.
in the R80 zone, I mean, that's
Mm.
Hendrick Street area,
Yeah.
so there's some big parcels down there. They're not necessarily vacant, but they might
Right.
have a house on them, but somebody could keep the house and potentially build something, which is what she's doing at Touchstone. I mean,
Sure.
she's keeping the house, she's keeping the barns, and she'd be adding the cottages.
To
and
the back.
she'd be living in the house as the caretaker for the
Mhm.
property.
Keeping the barns.
Yeah. There's a
There's-
couple barns on the
they're
property.
long.
No, I've shown the property, so
Oh, have you really?
I'm familiar with the property.
Yeah.
Uh,
Barns
the
are one of
barns-
those buildings, there's those accessory buildings that are attached to there's the duplex.
Yeah, there's the
And
duplex,
then
there's a long barn, and there's the shed workshop area.
Right.
The original house had 2-family, and then there was kind of a conference room with, looked like might be living space upstairs somewhere.
The idea is that she really would convert, well, for her, this property, this is above and beyond the zoning, but her property is to turn that into a caretaker house. So, and that's part of the requirement under the zoning, is somebody needs to be living on site as the caretaker for these properties.
And then there was another building at the back that had, I don't know, at least one kind of living arrangement.
I don't know if she's figured it all out yet. I mean, the
Yeah.
zoning needs to get into place, and then she'll file permits for what she wants to do, so I can't speak specific to her business plan.
I know there were several people that came to you.
Several
when they-
people
when they
came to me
looked-
for
When the
that
property
property.
was on the market, and they were told, what?
They were told it's a residentially zoned property, you could do residential uses, you can, you could do farming, you could have a home occupation, you can,
But you couldn't have like
Subdivision.
you could do a subdivision.
Okay, you could.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was permitted for a subdivision
Oh.
before they purchased it.
How many units on the subdivision it was permitted for?
I'd have to go back and check, it was 2 parcels, the parcels have now been split.
Right, so it wouldn't qualify.
She could do a small subdivision if she
Yeah,
wanted to.
probably how many
I
lots?
don't know,
I think those are
I'm not gonna
relevant
do the
questions.
geometry here.
Those would be important questions to have answered,
Mm-hmm,
to be able to understand how the land could be used currently
okay.
at its maximum potential, and also what farm, I know there had been a long farming history on this parcel
There were ZBA decisions that were associated with it.
with farming?
Yes, with yoga studio and.
Yeah, there were
Oh, to
ZBA
allow the-
decisions with the yoga studio, but not with farming. Farming was
Farming was the allowed.
kind of allowed by
use.
right,
Yep.
I think.
Yep, and then they
type
had these
of
other
use.
uses kind of tied to them.
So the other
But-
uses were
but-
tied to the special permit.
Right, but just to remember, big picture, we're not talking only about this property on West Street. This zoning is comprehensive.
To the
So
citywide.
I just wanna, I don't want you to get fixated on the West Street
No,
property.
but that's really what's driving this, I think. And there
It's-
aren't 3 or 4 other people looking to develop
No.
other
It was the
parcels in
catalyst.
city.
It was the catalyst for this,
Yeah.
but it's no different than when one of the owners of Small Oven came and had a zoning change to have residential kitchens and home occupation.
Right.
So there are other residential
Sure.
kitchens, So once this comes into place, she may be the catalyst and she may be the first person, but there may be other people, once this comes through and says, hey, this could be an interesting use of my property and my land, and to keep the agricultural component and to provide some additional income and lodging, and so she may be the catalyst, but it may not be the only one in town.
Of course.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to focus on what was here in the past, since that's probably gonna be the first application of
Mhm.
how this gets used. And that you say that she will be continuing agriculture usage there on the same?
She hasn't filed anything, so I can't speak to what she's actually gonna do until she
No, I
actually
was
files
just-
a permit.
Because you just mentioned agricultural, to
She'd
maintain
like-
agriculture.
She'd like to keep the agricultural aspect to that property, and I think she's got plans to do some agricultural activities on there,
Oh,
but,
okay.
yeah. There's an open space requirement
you.
as part of this.
Thank
If you
you.
look at the zoning, it requires the set
A-
aside
a
for open
specific-
space,
okay.
yeah.
Good.
Cool. So why don't we talk about some of the other things that are relevant to you while you're here?
Sure.
So I'll just say that we hold off on human rights for now. I imagine medical marijuana zone.
Or, let's start with recreational, so just to let you know
Okay.
that the planning board is actually gonna be discussing a moratorium on whether that's something that they should move forward on at the next meeting on the 18th.
Okay.
They had a very lively discussion with a lot of people in attendance 6 weeks ago or so. I thought it was great, the people who attended really had a lot to say in terms of, and it was, sort of on both sides of the aisle. I think what we kind of heard loud and clear is to keep this use out of the downtowns, to keep the retail aspect of recreational marijuana out of the downtowns, that there are more appropriate locations in the city for that type of use. So, until the state gets regulations in place, until there's a Cannabis Control Commission that's actually formed, there's so much flux happening right now at the state level in regards to recreational marijuana. I think that the only action that the planning board could take at this time is to put a moratorium in place until a certain date when the regs actually come out, and then we can have some thoughtful time, because the way that the timeline is set up right now, it really will give us only 2 weeks as a municipality to get local regs in place once the state's deadline hits for the draft regulations to come out by the CCC. So, I think that's personally where I'm.
Those 2 weeks are which 2 weeks? April 2018, is it?
Yeah, I think they kicked it, so, so they have to have, the deadline is April 1st, 2018.
So then we would have two.
No. March 15th, 2018 is for them to adopt initial regulations, and April 1st, 2018 is when they start to accept licenses. So between the 15th and the 1st.
Accept licenses or grant
Accept
licenses?
no,
Accept applications?
accept applications for
Accept
licenses.
application, but not necessarily grant them.
But not necessarily grant them, but what's happened under the medical marijuana is that the businesses they're kind of parallel their permit applications, because it's a little bit of a chicken and egg. Sometimes the local municipalities want to know that the state license process is underway, and then the state also wants to know that they've got the local approval, so they're often filing these permits in tandem. So I suspect that if they start filing at the state level, they're gonna expect to be able to start filing here. If there are state regulations in place, and this is what happened under medical marijuana, state regulations in place that say, these are the things you need to do at the local level, and we don't have anything in place, then we will follow the state regs. And maybe that's okay, but until we know what are in the state regs, it's kind of, it's really an unknown.
So you think the state would approve the regs without sending that out, without giving a heads up?
There's been
Before.
public workshops and meetings that are happening for comments, but they don't, last week there was an article in the Globe saying they're gonna pull it out of the Treasury Department at the state, which is what it's been filed under, and they're trying to come up with a different system similar to how they're licensing casinos. What they don't like about how it's currently set up is that the treasurer has all of the political power to appoint the Cannabis Commission of 3 seats. And they want something, they're proposing to have something where you've got somebody from the Treasury Department, you've got somebody appointed by the governor, you have somebody appointed by all these different entities, so not one entity has all the political power
They're also
for control
discussing
of the CCC.
a larger board, if I'm not mistaken.
From
Those
3
are
to 5
possibilities.
people, yep.
So all.
There's a lot of things in
A lot in
flux.
flux. There are 110 bills that have been filed.
There's no money at the state level to set up anything. They have to develop software. They have to appoint the commissioners. They have to train them. There is I think honestly, they will be up to the wire. I think they will be dropping these in our laps on March 15th because they're so far behind, in my opinion, as they are, as it is right now. They have less than a year to pull these together, and they don't even know what jurisdiction is gonna be in there.
I don't understand why they're reinventing the wheel. This has been done. This has been done.
Well, I think,
They're trying to invent a new system?
I think what it is
Stupid.
that the legislator kind of, they missed their opportunity to craft something thoughtful.
Right.
And they just kicked the can, and then the voters said, we're tired of waiting when we're gonna pass something, and now they're realizing that what was passed by the voters has a lot of problems to them, and now they have to fix it.
Okay, well,
So,
keep us updated
anyway.
on what's going on in the planning board. I'm not in favor of a moratorium, so we'll see what happens.
One other issue on those.
It's not I just understand, it's not a moratorium on all.
No, I realize that.
It's a moratorium until we have regs in place, and
I
then we
just-
can craft our own.
My
That's
personal
all.
opinion is I would like to get out in front of this and be creative and draft, not wait for the state and say what we think would be appropriate for
But
East
then it
Hampton.
could conflict with the
And if
state.
it conflicts, then we change it. But
It's not that easy, though.
Well,
It takes 2 months to get anything.
But I'm not saying pass it before this comes out. But I'm saying this is my perspective. I'm saying get out in front of it. Say what do we think that we want here? How do we want it here? Draft that, and then when it comes out, we'll have at least something that we can say. Well, does this jive? Does it not? What do we need to tweak?
So you're
But-
saying draft it, but don't pass it?
Yeah. I'm saying I'm
I'm in full agreement with you with the community
Or-
hash this out,
Yeah.
hash this out.
figure it out.
Figure it out fully as much as they can, given the state of information.
I mean, we
Have
know-
a plan in mind, don't pass it, and be ready.
Yeah. I mean, like
I am on the opposite side of the issue with you when it comes to the moratorium. I would be in favor of the moratorium because I think the deadlines are very tight. In fact, if we don't have something in place, my understanding is as of April 1st, and an application goes in,
We would-
one of the requirements of the state's application is, do you conform with local requirements? If certain vendors apply and we don't have something in place, then they can go wherever they want.
Well, not
Virtually.
necessarily.
Not
We don't know
necessarily.
that.
We don't know.
Until we know what's in the regs, they could still have the same thing with
We have
schools
nothing,
and
we have
the-
nothing to say that you can't
But
go
we-
in a certain area.
But what we do know is that
They could say, so there's nothing, and one of the measures is a checkbox that says, are you in conformance with local regulations? Yep, we sure are.
Because there
There
are
aren't-
no,
there
are none.
Because there aren't
local
any.
regs.
That's-
And then the application is now in the state's
So,
hand to approve.
Let me
Well,
just,
I mean,
let me
I'll
just
think
put this
about
to
it,
you though,
but-
from a business perspective. If I was somebody who was running a business, I would want complete clarity on what the permitting process was and know that I'm not spending money to go through a permit process that I have to come back and do again
Yeah,
because the
yeah.
regs are now inconsistent with what the state wants.
I don't think that would be a good idea.
So
but
I just want
I
to
don't
warn you
think
about
either of us was in
crafting.
favor of
I don't think,
passing
no,
it.
I think having
Okay.
what we think makes sense. And I mean, and here's what we do know, and this is not gonna change, that the medical dispensaries are gonna get first crack.
Right.
That's not gonna change.
Right.
That actually may change,
Mm.
because there is an argument that aired in West Springfield at the local hearings, whereby someone said, gee, when our community considered medical marijuana, that was the issue, and we are very much in favor of patients getting medical marijuana. We never considered the possibilities that there would be recreational marijuana, and in fact, we never considered that because we had approved medical marijuana, that the recreational marijuana would now be in the same area, however the area is defined, where the medical marijuana is. And certain communities were very much taken aback by that, so these are two different things.
I think certain people in the communities. I mean, this
Well,
passed
I'm
with
sure
a
there's
mandate.
people
I mean,
yeah.
we're not saying like certain communities that. I mean, like Western Mass, they pretty much
I'm not sure
most of
that-
the communities
I'm not
passed
sure-
it
I'm
with a
not sure
pretty
that-
solid.
I'm not sure that we have any
you looked at
issue
the numbers
locally.
based on the precincts in East Hampton, just out of curiosity?
Yes.
I haven't
It's
looked.
very
at them.
interesting.
Is it really?
Yes.
They're very interesting.
It is very interesting.
And
There's one precinct who voted pretty heavily against it.
Was
in
it
East
five?
Hampton.
Which precinct is that?
Hold on, I got it here, I think it is 5, the Plains area.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
I mean, it's not.
There's definitely no shops going in the
it's-
Plains area.
No, there's not. But, so just, I know you're saying in terms of the, here it is. So precinct 1, it was 59% yes,
Right.
38% no, 2% blanks. Precinct 2, 69% yes, 29% no, 1.4% blank. 3, 65% yes, 32% no, 1.8% blank. 4, 61% yes, 37% no, 1.2% blank. 5, it still passed. 51% yes, 47% no, and
Right.
1.2% blank.
Still, I mean,
It-
that's a solid mandate. I mean, we're talking 60-30 for most of the,
61% total, 37% no.
yeah.
Total for the whole city as a whole.
So-
So people want,
That's a mandate,
Wanted to
no
pass
matter how
the
you look at
initiative.
They
it.
wanted to pass and the
And they
state
did.
didn't do
Yeah.
what they needed to do in a timely
Right.
manner, so the voters took it in their own hands.
Sure. So, I mean,
think-
listen, I'm willing to entertain anything, but I do feel like just passing a moratorium and not like having a discussion about what we think makes sense. Like I think that, you know, if what came out of that meeting was they don't want areas in downtown, that's something to consider. The number of shops, I think that's something to consider.
But that's a ballot initiative, that's not under zoning.
Is it
So that's through the ballot, so that, see,
isn't I thought we had some sort of,
do you have
on-
my
on the
handy
number.
dandy,
I don't know
summary
if I have
sheet?
that. I don't think I ever got this.
I think I may have emailed it to you, but, so if you go to, where is it? Act authorize imposition by ordinance or by law by a vote of the voters of that city or town, the additional limitations. Using the phrase by a vote of the voters typically requires a vote in an election where the adoption of an ordinance or bylaw occurs by vote of the local legislative body. In our opinion, this reference to the voters, rules of statutory construction suggests any attempt to approve an ordinance or bylaw requires approval of the voters of the municipality at an election. So that's prohibiting the operation of one or more types of marijuana establishments within the municipality and limiting the number of marijuana retailers to fewer than 20% of the number of licenses. So that has, and limiting the number of any type of marijuana establishments to fewer than the number of medical marijuana treatment centers. This is not anything council can do.
Right.
This is not anything zoning can do.
This
This is
is-
a vote of the voters.
Right.
So just understand that.
And so what are they allowed by right? 20% of liquor licenses? Is that
They
correct?
can do whatever they, I don't know, there's no regs, we don't know.
right now, right now, we do have something. We have the initiative petition.
Yeah, the initiative
passed,
petition was 20%.
what?
And says 20% of alcohol.
There's a petition for
Yeah,
East
No,
Hampton?
the main statewide
Yes,
ballot
yes.
question, I think. Is
Yes.
what,
And that's all anyone has to deal with at this point.
yeah, so this is fluid. There's no
Right.
question.
Right.
And if I recall correctly, that says that it's the number of alcohol licenses for retail sales in the community,
Mhm.
which I asked, what is it, Maureen, from the Worcester, the Attorney General's office, and she didn't know the answer. She didn't have the answer to the number, whether or not farm sales, the pour permits were included or not included in the number in
Oh, the
the
farm and brewery
calculations.
permits,
Farm and
yeah.
brewery permits, because they're retail.
Oh, right. Yeah, I wonder if those...
They're retail
or-
because you can take out, you can buy beer
Is
there.
it just
Yeah.
the,
And
is
take
it
it
just
out.
the,
Or is
Or is
it,
it
I think it's
just the
I imagine it is just the quota.
and not any?
Not the over quotas, not the...
That's not clear.
It's not,
Not
it's
telling,
not,
not knowing.
yeah.
That's not
And
clear.
it seems like we can't, right, we can't define that.
You can't define it as a counselor.
Okay.
You know, it's not up to you to determine.
Oh, fair
So
enough.
that's a really helpful
Okay.
handout. It's like the summary of
So
the entire
this
law
actually
in
pushes
4
for two
pages.
things. One is a
Can I keep
moratorium,
this?
Absolutely.
a moratorium, or two, for the public to say, if you guys can't do anything in ordinance, then maybe we should put it on the ballot
Right.
and rediscuss this.
So
And boy,
that would come back to
That's-
the council
that's-
to take a vote about it being on the ballot.
because the ballot initiative would take place this November, if I'm not
Would it,
mistaken.
really?
Yes, it would have to be this
It
November.
would have to be this November.
It would have to be this November's election.
But there might not be
It has to
any,
in place by
There's
now.
nothing in place.
but there won't be anything in place, so
Right.
how do you
See-
know?
See, the crux of the issue is
Yeah.
that it's really hard to have local control right now without having any guidance from the state.
Right.
It's really difficult. So,
Okay. Well, it seems like that, you know, we're gonna have to come back to this and.
Oh, yeah,
figure it out.
definitely, but I just wanted to brief you on where the planning board is
Yeah.
at and just make sure that we're consistent and that we're sharing information
Okay.
and the communication lines are open, just so that you're not
So-
going on one track and we're doing something
And
else.
I think that what they're doing, having kind of public forums, that might be something that we end up doing as well, just to kind of,
You're welcome to attend.
yeah. But I think maybe if, you know, I'm happy to attend, but I also think it might be higher profile and we might get more people if we
Sure.
put it out there, so,
Mhm.
and get some feedback.
Mhm.
But I guess that's a topic for another day.
Yep.
Now, as far as what we were going to actually look at tonight with medical marijuana, I don't know if you were aware.
I am not aware of anything.
Okay, so the lawyer and Stephen Riley had come to us and he had requested one change to the ordinance, and that was specific to their operating times. And basically, what he said was, there's a twofold reason why they would like to change their time. So originally they were 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And he was requesting 6 a.m. And staying later, open till 10 p.m. And so the first reason was opening earlier allowed them to schedule their deliveries and pickups in a more random fashion over a longer period of time, so they couldn't be targeted. Which they were concerned that could potentially happen.
There's
And
so
then,
much delivery traffic back there.
yeah, well, and you know, I think that they're worried, since it's at this point it's all cash,
Right.
that it would be an easy target for a thief or, you know, someone who's looking to steal.
Sure.
And then the 10 o'clock time is the second layer of this, which he basically said it's going to allow them to compete more effectively with Northampton.
Yeah, because they close at 7.
They close at 7 or 8, and this would allow them to have a competitive advantage.
Sure.
And I don't know how. I mean, I think we all kind of were like, it seems reasonable enough. So.
Have they had just discussions with the mill owners themselves? Because, you know, a lot of the parking regulations that are in place back there due to the mills project, I'd have to go back and look at the agreements, but I think that there's parking was only until, I think it's 10,
Okay.
but I think that needs to be verified
Sure.
because there are parking standards that the mill owners have come to agreement on when people need to be out of that parking lot, and I
Right.
just wanna make sure there's not a conflict.
Absolutely, and so what we were planning on doing was we were just planning on stating that we would like to review this, so it would go to us and the planning board,
Okay,
and then we could have we would still go through the whole process
Yep.
because it's zone change.
sure.
And that way we can verify parking.
Yeah.
But you know, I think it seems reasonable for us to take a look at, and one of the things that seemed kind of exciting as they were talking about it, this was the first time I've heard of this, they proposed a revenue sharing with the city. So that was interesting.
So, if I may, any revenue sharing would be an agreement, a host agreement
Yeah.
between the chief executive's office and the organization.
Yeah.
So that's a matter of negotiation between them. The only leverage we seem to have at this point is the hours and anything else.
Right. Well, I think that
So-
he.
But it
I
doesn't-
spoke with the
doesn't
mayor's
the-
office, and the mayor said, geez, I don't know why you'd ever want to approve anything in advance of our having the negotiations with the organization first.
Except.
And then if we came to some agreement that we agreed to, then the community could consider whether or not to grant
So, my
an
question.
extension.
The revenue sharing wasn't mentioned in relation to the medical marijuana. It was.
It wasn't,
that-
it wasn't at all, but
Yeah, that was for
the leverage the
recreational.
community has is,
So, but if it's a host agreement, doesn't that mean that they have exclusivity in the city? And that
That's-
nobody else can come in?
for medical marijuana.
Well, they're talking about recreational.
Yeah.
But
So-
I mean, they're not the
the
only
host-
company that I'm having conversations with.
Right.
This is, you know, we have a lot of mills that have a lot of vacant space, and it's urban agriculture is.
How many have you spoken to?
2 others?
2 others. As far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier. If they're good they meet all the other criteria, then it's good for business in the city.
So, I don't know,
These are just grow operations, this doesn't have.
Yeah,
to
it
be-
wouldn't be a
I'm thinking for
dispensary.
grow, I understand
Yeah.
that these would be grow
These are just
operations
grow
in
operations.
the industrial, highway business, or mill industrial
Mill
business.
industrial.
no.
I think it's premature to proceed with times. I think it'd be useful to.
See,
Have a
I disagree.
conversation.
I
Have a
think
conversation
we need
with the
to,
mayor
I think we need to
They're
move
ready
it
to
forward.
open, aren't they?
Yeah, we need to get this going. And I feel like it's, I kind of feel like after them investing $5 million in the city, it borders on extortion, us saying, you know, we aren't gonna consider looking at a time change that's gonna allow you to
How
open
could it be
effectively.
extortion if they knew the rules when they came in? The rules were 8 to 8. That was clear.
True, but and I think that for us to not at least put this out in the daylight, to say this is something that they've requested because it will make their operation more feasible. After they've, I mean, you know, when you're creating a plan and you're doing all this, you know, that one time piece might have been something that, well, yeah, it seems fine then, but when it comes to practicality, this is going to work better. And I think when they said that they wanted to do revenue sharing, that was in relation to if we get recreational marijuana, which they wanted, they talked about exclusivity. If they get recreational, then we would consider doing a revenue sharing with the city in addition to all the taxes, or whatever taxes.
I didn't
that
hear
we're
it that way, but I thought it was the revenue, the host agreement was based on the host agreement.
No,
And not contingent on getting recreational.
I think I think he had basically, because we had discussed with attorney with Steve,
Right.
Steve Riley,
yeah.
the potential for recreational going there.
Mhm.
You know, because he was like, well, we're established, we will be established, we would like to get it, you know, and if we do, then we would be considering, and I think it was around exclusivity, like we would like to be the one place in town, and then we would consider a revenue sharing, and it was connected to being exclusive, so.
Just in terms of the hours of operation, they are looking to expand in their current location. They're looking to add additional
They're
square
adding to
footage.
look at, yeah.
So that's their next step is coming to amend their permit with the planning board to expand their
Expand.
operation.
Right.
So, you know, I don't know if that expansion is contingent on hours or not. I have no idea. I haven't had any conversations with him at all, you know. I'm
I
only
mean-
getting dribs of drabs of information, so.
I think, JP, if you want to object to this, I think that's fine. I think that getting the process moving makes sense. Because remember, this process is a process where it has to come to us and the planning board, and we have to have a joint public hearing, and then it has to come back to the council for a full hearing. But I don't necessarily see this as a negotiating chip that, you know, if you give us something, then we'll do this for you. I think
Well, right now,
this is more of like.
I understand, but right now, none of the medical marijuana is taxed or provides any revenue to the city.
No, they will be paying tax on it. They have to pay tax, but they do not tax the product. But they will pay tax to the city on the space that they're.
But everyone who owns a space pays tax to the city.
Right.
I'm talking about a portion of the sales. No portion of the sales are taxed. I think it would behoove us to at least have an opportunity to hear from the mayor before we move forward.
Well, she'd be welcome to speak to this at the
Maybe
joint
we should
public
invite her
hearing.
to the next meeting at our next meeting.
I mean,
That would be my
What are you thinking
recommendation.
of moving this forward? What's the timeline here?
Well, I would like to put this to our committee tonight so we can set the joint public hearing.
Okay.
And maybe even combine it with the June public hearing and do a two
2-for-1?
2-for-1.
A twofer?
Yeah, save on advertising. Because, you know, I think that, I mean, it's never been, medical marijuana, we have never expected that we were gonna get any percentage of their sales that wasn't written into the ordinance. We don't get a percentage of CVS's sales when they sell OxyContin. I don't know, we don't get a percentage of the liquor store's sales when they sell a case of beer. I don't understand why.
I get that you're behind this.
No, but I just don't understand why there's a double,
understand.
some sort of double
I-
standard that you think that we should get a piece of.
Why would you think I think there's a double standard?
No, I'm
just
telling you that's a
recommending
double
that the
standard.
mayor,
I'm telling you it's a
I
double
think,
standard.
has
If we don't
someone
get
weigh
a
in
cut,
on this, and
if we don't get
I'd
a
like
cut
to
of
do it.
alcohol that's sold in East Hampton, we don't get a cut of opioids that are sold in East Hampton, why do we assume that we're gonna get a cut of cannabis that's sold in East Hampton?
because the mayor had said that she was talking to them about the possibility of a host.
Well, I think that could be a possibility. I don't necessarily think it's contingent on us looking at their hours.
Wouldn't it make sense to find out, is my question. I understand.
Potentially, and I think through the process, that's where this could be, you know, it would come to bear.
I think I think it's premature to put the process forward without having a conversation.
Okay, that's your opinion.
You're looking to move the process forward on June sixth.
Yes.
We could find time before then to have that conversation.
That's what I think. I think that there's plenty of time to.
I think that's good, so
Well, I
think.
don't
yeah.
necessarily think the two of you are in disagreement with
No.
Well, I
each
mean, if we
other.
wanted to move the process forward tonight, I would be opposed to
Well,
that.
we wouldn't be moving anywhere
Getting
until
the process,
June, you know, the first hearing wouldn't be until June 6th.
moving the process forward, is setting a public hearing, is recommending the setting of a public hearing. So I would not want to take that step. I would want to take that step after we have the discussion. I mean, if we meet in 2 weeks, would that still give us time to put this on
I just need to have 2 weeks
Agenda?
for advertising for June sixth, so I need to,
the, oh,
I'm without my
It should be
phone
fine.
right now, so I can't look at my calendar, but, you know, whatever 2 weeks is before June sixth, I gotta run the legal ad, and I have to have it in a week ahead of that, so I need 3 weeks before June sixth to know what the story is.
So-
Which means that it's gotta go to council, and then council's gotta kick it down.
Yeah.
So a decision would probably need to be made, I'm guessing, by
So we could-
May, right?
Yeah, mid-May. But all right, so let me. So your issue with this is that you want to talk to the mayor because.
I think we should wait, I think we should let the mayor weigh in on this subject.
On,
She's spoken to me, she's spoken to me.
Can she weigh in
and said-
during
The
your
process?
process, though?
can't you just tell us? I mean, if we have it, if it
She
comes,
certainly could weigh in during the process.
and if she says nope, stop. I mean, we could always.
I just think
remove
that's
it.
not
I'd
the
like
best way to proceed.
For me, I feel like this change is a relatively, you know, it ends up being 2 hours on either end of the day. It's not that big of a deal. It's probably not going to be worth, you know, a huge amount of money in a host agreement necessarily, and I feel uncomfortable about that anyway. You know, because I feel like, you know, if another company came to us and said, our hours are restricted and in order for us to do business in the city of East Hampton in a more effective way, we need, like, I don't know if we would be holding them, I don't know if we would be holding that over their heads necessarily. You know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to be fair and equitable. Like if a liquor store, even though they're controlled by the ABCC, you know, like they said we need to open an hour earlier. Like, I don't know. I just feel like, to me, it's.
The host agreement, from what I'm gathering from your conversation, has to do with the recreational marijuana component. This is the medical marijuana
This is medical.
component. So it's, they're almost like it's two different. It sounds to me that it's not exactly tied to this zoning change, and that host agreement may be part of the discussion when it goes recreational and when the recreational discussion happens.
Right.
If I'm understanding you correctly.
That was my impression.
What I understood from them saying they wanted the earlier time was that they're trying to expand to Eastern Massachusetts as well, so getting earlier starts would
Mhm.
allow them to go out further. Like that was part of their argument.
So, I mean, I think you can feel free to vote against it, but I feel like it's fine to move, and whatever the mayor has, whatever input she has, she can do that within the process. We're not having a public hearing until mid-June or early June. I feel like that gives us plenty of time, and I think if we just hold off, then it just extends that further out, and then we could be bumping up against the time that they actually need to know what their hours are going to be when they're getting their signs printed and they're building their website and those types of things. And I don't necessarily want to hinder them with the amount of money they're investing, and they are taxpayers, they're business just like any other business. You know, so I mean, feel free to vote against it, but I'm, you know, I would like to move this so we can get the clock started.
So you don't think there'd be enough time to
There might
still
be.
get this on?
There might be. I'm honestly, I want
I don't know, this is your process, not mine.
I mean, if we meet at our next meeting and we voted then, I'm not sure that it would have set the timeline of the plan.
Well, we have to. So remember, we have to vote it out of committee, and then it has to be back to the next city council meeting, which is where then we move it to us, and then we move it to planning at the same time, and then that starts the clock. And so, I just don't. For me, I don't see a reason to delay, because within the process, if the mayor has major issues with it, and they're valid, then we can say okay, and we can move it, you know, move it off if we need to. But I don't think she will. That's just my thought.
Will this at all impact, will a change in hours at all impact recreational marijuana sales?
I think that they're going to have to do a totally different set of
The hours,
regulations.
Well,
Because that will be the local
part
zoning.
of the local zoning, I mean, if you wanna
If we
change it to
decided,
say-
if we decided what we would do for local zoning.
Right.
But in the interim, my understanding is medical marijuana sites would be able to set up in the same area and presumably, in the absence of any local zoning,
You're
the
looking
same.
into a crystal ball.
I'm looking into the crystal ball saying
We
that.
don't know.
That those hours would be the same hours.
We don't have to make them the same, we
I
have
know
that
we,
local control.
but we're saying we're not doing anything until the.
We don't know what we're doing.
We don't know.
We're just
Yeah, we
having a
don't know what we're
conversation.
doing.
We're
So
just trying to
Why are we
strategize.
expanding hours and we don't know what we're doing?
Well, because this is.
And it could apply to
But it doesn't.
recreational if.
It doesn't. Yeah, there's no
I'm
recreational
not sure
regulations.
you can make that statement.
I can, because there's no recreational
It's under-
regulations.
It's under
But
zoning
there
that
will
says
be.
medical marijuana.
This is
so
medical.
This is only for medical facilities.
Yeah.
I presume we will have a zoning section that will be recreational marijuana, which may
I
end
would
up
hope
having
so.
completely different
We could have
standards.
completely different
Yeah.
hours, but I think
And-
the argument will be is how can we sell medical marijuana till 10 o'clock and we want to sell recreational till some other hour? I'm
Well,
sure.
you have to have a card in
Really?
order to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's a state process for being able to purchase from a medical facility.
Right.
So,
So-
You have a medical card and you need that medicine and you need it at 9 o'clock at night,
right.
then you should be able to get it. If you're doing this for your own joy and you just want it to do whatever, maybe you need to plan a little bit more ahead and you have to get it by 7.
Right.
I don't know
Yeah.
how they will regulate that internally if they end up having a retail facility for both medical and recreational. I presume the card would be the entity that determines how late they would be able to sell to
Right.
somebody. Those are their own business decisions that they're
Yeah.
gonna need to.
And I think that as far as times when recreational comes, that's going to be a discussion at that time. Like, what are the times that we think are appropriate for recreational marijuana sales?
I'll wait till
They
the-
were also talking about having completely separate
Yes,
storefronts
separate
and
space.
I think they will have to, given
Yeah.
the security that's required.
Yeah.
I think they will need to.
Yeah. So.
So
So
those
there's going to be
business
half the
decisions.
people not being allowed in the door and the other
That
half, you know.
being allowed in the same door,
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. So I mean, I just don't. I think that since this
I
is.
know you're passionate about.
I'm not. I just think that it's like I'm trying to be equitable. Like I'm trying to say, if another business came to us, would we hold off on it? The answer to that is no.
I think you also need to think about that area in general and how much truck traffic is happening behind those mills and the hours that they're already coming and going. A lot of those manufacturing facilities are already having trucks leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning and are
Right.
having deliveries at midnight. So, there are hours that those businesses don't have to abide by. They can come and go as they please.
Right.
And it's in that same zone, it's in that same building area. So just, think about it from what other activities happen back there, I guess, is the context I'm just trying to put it into.
Into a zoning
Yeah.
context, and that certainly makes
Right.
sense. And that would all proceeded with the industrial district, and it was all
Exactly.
business, and, I mean, all industrial, and nobody lived there.
Exactly.
Now we're trying to get a mixed use, residential.
Well, then the building owners, if they are opposed to
Yeah.
this, the other building owners who have residential components, I guarantee you they will be at those meetings speaking their mind. I've got no
Yep.
doubt about it.
No.
And they
That's
will
what
be,
I-
they will be notified as abutters.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean
So-
that's the reason why I feel like I feel comfortable moving this, because what it does is it starts the process, it gets people talking. This isn't approved, it just allows us to talk about it, and it allows us to have a joint public hearing with the planning board, and then
I'm not opposed to that.
Right,
Doing
and
that-
then
doing the
within that-
process. I'm in-
within that time
Certainly I'm in
we'll be
favor
able
of
to
that.
have
Just-
plenty of discussions with the mayor to see what if she. I mean, I'm not aware of any host agreement for medical marijuana that we have.
There is none.
And so, that being the case, then there should be nothing holding this back.
JP, I guess I'm not.
She
I would-
asked, please, do not pass anything until.
Well, we're not gonna, we can't pass it.
Do not move anything forward until
Well,
we've had a chance
that's
to discuss this.
not her, that's not her choice.
I understand, it's our choice.
Exactly.
That's right. So,
That's a lot to put on you as one counselor.
She didn't say anything to me as the chair, so.
Say anything to me either.
right. So I think we'd be helpful to hear from her, but if you feel.
Well, I feel like if she
differently,
wanted to say
certainly-
something to me, she could have called me or talked to me last night. She could have sent me an email.
And maybe I didn't understand her correctly, so it was a possibility.
So, but, you know, from my perspective, I feel like getting this moving with the amount of stuff we have on our agenda is a good thing.
So why don't
So
you
we
put it
can-
on, why don't you put it on the table and we'll have her vote.
Okay, I'd like to put it on the table. I need a motion though.
I'll make a motion to put it on the table.
Okay, I'll second it. Discussion?
I discussed it.
Discussed it pretty good. All right, so.
Yeah, but maybe Tamara-
Yeah, what do you think?
Clearly, I'm the swing vote here, so I think I'm still not understanding what the mayor's rationale would be.
And I don't either.
Except
That's-
just wanting control over that process, but I don't really understand that.
Well, the control, I mean, if there is an agreement and the mayor chooses to enter into the agreement, having whatever variables of flexibility to discuss with the party you want to negotiate.
And the agreement would be how much
We're gonna
revenue?
give you $100,000 a year, 200 a year, 500,000, a percentage of sales. Who knows what an agreement might entail? Or there might be no agreement, and then the issue would stand entirely on its merits without the agreement.
So is there a possibility that we could
But
get
if we give away
less
the ship,
money?
if those variables are important to an agreement, and there could be, $200,000 on the table, just to throw out a number.
Like, okay, so.
And you've given up those variables, then,
Mhm.
okay, why do I want to have an agreement with you?
At the same time, knowing that the lawyer for that company was in this meeting and was asking us to move forward, I would think with considering the time change, to not move forward with that could actually look more restrictive than moving forward to them. I would think that could be a
It
bigger
doesn't delay it.
factor.
I think we're still on the June 6th timetable. I don't think weighing in with the mayor doesn't change the timetable at all.
Mhm.
It's just on the
Yeah, but I mean, two things.
Because if we decide to meet in 2 weeks and discuss this, we could vote to move it forward and put it on the agenda and do all the scheduling.
The first thing for me is this leaves a bad taste in my mouth, because I feel like, as we discuss issues of zoning, using a small change in the zoning as some sort of leverage to try to get someone to pay us money leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I feel like this zoning, we should be looking at what makes sense for the space, what makes sense for the operation that it's intended to use for, and not necessarily say, well, maybe we can use this as a bargaining chip to try to get more money from them. That just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. I don't know. I guess that's business, but I feel like in municipal business, I don't know. I feel weird about that. A, and B, I think that as far as I know, the medical side doesn't have necessarily a host agreement, and whatever they do for the city, I think is going to be them trying to do what's best for the host that they're in, which they have told us this is the most hospitable place that they've dealt with. From the planner to the mayor to the city council to the police to the fire, it's been the best experience they've had. And I feel like that's a better bargaining chip, that, you know, we've treated them well and we've been fair to them. I don't necessarily, and the reason why the reason why I wanted to call this was because I don't think that this is a huge issue, and I don't think that nobody's said anything to me about not moving this forward. And I want to make sure that we continue to do our due diligence to make sure that this business has what they need to move forward in a timely fashion. So that's, I mean, I don't disagree that we could hold off and talk to the mayor and have, but I would disagree if you said that we couldn't do that even if we pass that tonight.
Now I do understand.
So there's no reason why we can't meet in 2 weeks and invite the mayor and have her input and still use that, whatever that input is. I don't think it necessarily changes anything whether we call it tonight or whether we call it in 2 weeks. Our options are basically the same.
I think it puts the mayor in a weaker position if her intent was to negotiate. Because it leaves it in a whole process that she doesn't have control over, which is, by right, that's fine, she doesn't have control over that process. But if her intent is to negotiate from a position of strength, then I think we should be cooperative with her in that regard. At least to hear her out.
Like I said, I've never heard anything about a host agreement for the medical side.
And maybe there isn't one, or maybe there is, but if it has to do with a fiscal matter for the city, I think in order to be responsible to the city, every little bit of money that we're able to bring in is important to the schools, to the parks,
Is
to
she
everything we
asking
do.
to hold off because she wants to think about that, or is it because she wants to make sure that she's meeting with the schools and everything? I'm trying to see the difference between having those conversations in an open meeting forum versus in a private forum. It feels like I'm not sure what she needs the private time for.
I thought I was suggesting a public time before us.
Okay, then I
That she
clearly
meets
don't know
that
what's
she
going
meets
on
with
here.
us at our next meeting, and we ask her, geez, what are your thoughts about this? Do you think it'll affect in any way any plans you might have for a host agreement? What do you think about the host agreement? Are you moving forward? Does it matter whether, let's say that the zoning was changed in advance of your negotiations?
Mhm.
Okay, that's fine. If it's fine with her, great, we should proceed and discuss it.
But
And
the
what if
zoning,
it's not?
If it
What
isn't,
if
then
she
I
says,
think
"I
we
want
have,
an
we have a
additional 6
decision to make
months"?
based on her input.
Mhm.
so, but the reality is that we wouldn't change the zoning before we would talk to her. We would just have it on our agenda, which.
It then becomes a discussion that we've made in the public, it becomes something that gets reported eventually as being out there, that we're now changed, it becomes more.
I mean, it already is.
More politicized.
It is. It's on our agenda right now.
It is, but could be withdrawn.
I don't know why we would do that.
I understand that, but I think, it was simply my perspective that we ought to be able to consider her perspective on
Well, and my perspective on that is that if she wanted her perspective to be known, she would be here. Because this is on our agenda, and this is what we're talking about. If it's of such grave importance, she would
this.
have no problem reaching out to me.
I agree with you, she obviously isn't here today to discuss it.
And she didn't send. I mean, I'll check my email, but I don't think I got anything from her recently at all.
And I'd love to hear that she says, it's no problem, it has nothing to do with the host agreement, we're okay, we're good. give them whatever they want. Okay, now we know. That wasn't the conversation that she had, that wasn't what I took away.
Okay. And then again, I would say that, she would still have that opportunity.
So,
So I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Aye.
I'm gonna say I'm in favor of this one.
I'll say,
Okay. So 2-0 passes. So we will bring it to I will write up something, let Barbara know that this needs to be submitted to the subcommittee, the planning board, and then we can start discussions. And we'll find out. We're still in a position of, I feel really weird about that. I don't like using zoning as a bargaining chip, but is that legal? It feels really weird to me. Yes and no, maybe?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I've never seen it happen.
Okay.
That doesn't mean anything.
Because it's
we haven't
like,
seen too much
to me it seems
medical marijuana or recreational.
no, but imagine it in a different scenario. Like, be like, oh, well, you're opening up a nightclub, so
It wouldn't be involved in a night, this is
I need
more
to
like.
get my child home from
Oh,
dinner.
yeah, yeah.
So,
You do that.
so
Anyway,
anything
I
else?
We've
No,
talked
I
about
think
that.
that's good. I think that's all the zoning
I
stuff.
did-
Sorry.
I did have a planning question.
Okay.
I think on
The signs?
the trucks.
Oh, food trucks.
Hold on,
The
can I
food
just
truck.
say on the signs though that it's half written.
Okay.
We're gonna bring
That's
it
good.
back after the cottage.
Oh my gosh.
After the
50%.
cottage stuff is done, the seasonal cottage, and then
Yeah.
probably after this is done.
Yeah.
We can really only kind of handle like
One thing at a time.
zoning thing at
Yeah.
a time. It's too much
Thanks.
otherwise. So it's on the back burner simmering. It's half written. We've gotten like the easy stuff done. Now the hard stuff, and the
Yeah.
planning board really wants input, and they want people there. They don't want to be the entity that writes this
Sure.
by themselves, the 5 of them.
Okay. Can you let
So-
us know when they're discussing it?
I will.
Okay.
I will let you know.
And you might want to let them know that they might want to rethink that blow up sign thing, because a lot of people have been dancing to the tax one
Oh,
out
it got
there.
taken down.
Oh, did it?
Yeah.
I was gonna say because
It's not
that's
allowed-
that's against the
It's not allowed
the
now,
rules.
and the zoning enforcement officer.
Okay, I was gonna say.
It's gone. It's gone.
Suddenly that became a really strange social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah, I was
It's
like,
gone
everybody's
now.
dancing
It's
to
not
it.
there. Okay, so
Okay.
food trucks.
Food trucks, I think the only item really on the food truck, I think we were ready to.
We're ready to
let this one go.
Let it go.
The only item on it that we're concerned about was establishing a spot for food trucks, and I'm looking to the pond and that one spot,
Mhm.
the last parking space there, and wondering how we can accomplish that.
Hmm.
I mean, right now, they could go to and get permits through the health department and park and be there. I
Right.
mean,
Or
there's-
anywhere.
But they could park anywhere.
They could park anywhere.
So that was one of the
But
things.
there's technically 1 hour parking, right?
Right.
So wherever there's 1 hour parking, they could be there for an hour. Is it enforced?
No.
But if the police started to enforce them everywhere, then yeah, it could be enforced, but.
I would think the brick and mortars would be the ones that would call
They
the
wouldn't
police
want-
to have them enforced.
Yeah, they wouldn't
That's
want
what would
it
happen.
parked in front.
I'll tell you right now, in Cultural Chaos, we're not having food trucks, we're having outside, well, we're having East Hampton food vendors that are outside the cultural district,
Okay.
but there's no food trucks.
No
And
food.
and that is brick and mortars being very adamant that there shall be no food trucks.
Oh, interesting.
So,
Because that was one of the things, like, we were like, oh, well, events, maybe allow them to park in this parking lot, have this be a space where they could.
no
but if-
food trucks for Cultural Chaos, it's been an ongoing discussion for
Who
years.
is Cultural Chaos is a
I'm sorry?
nonprofit. Cultural Chaos is a
So
nonprofit.
It's
ECA
a-
plus?
It's the Cultural District Committee that's under
The
ECA.
Cultural District
Yeah.
Committee under ECA.
Under
Under
ECA.
ECA.
So it has municipal auspices.
Yes,
Hmm.
but it's also representative of the businesses that are on Cottage Street.
Right, so if a business on Cottage Street chose to have a food truck on their private property,
On their private property,
They
and
could.
and they have. Brass Cat's done it.
Yeah.
they could.
And
Yeah.
they've done it.
Right.
And I think they even did it on Cultural Chaos.
Yeah.
I think.
Because they just have them park on
They have
in
them
their
parked
parking
in
lot.
their parking lot.
And maybe that we're all fine with it.
Yeah.
I still felt better
Having some restrictions.
having some restrictions and having a spot be available. I thought that was our sense.
It was. I mean, that was what we were talking about, and I don't know, because I've been thinking about this for so long, how you would restrict other than signing it and having it no parking for other people. That's the only way you could really effectively do it, and there's not another spot in front of that, because I think that spot is like the last reasonable spot because of the way the line goes in the road. So it's not, and nobody would agree to losing a spot. So
I
that's why
agree with you there.
that's why I was saying that maybe it makes
Leave
sense
it the way
to.
it is and see if brick and mortars have issues with parking
We
by
could-
the hour.
I mean, yeah.
We could do like we haven't had any problems yet because they're basically going to
We
the
haven't.
They're going to the breweries.
They're going
So-
to the breweries, and that makes sense, and
Shall
that's
we,
fine.
shall we move to remove the item without prejudice?
I think the only thing that I wanted to discuss about that was what Chief Motter said about propane tanks and having them inspected. I feel like that's a valid thing, and I don't know if we can do that by ordinance, or if we can just ask the health department to make that a condition. All right, take care.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, no,
My
thank you for
time is
coming.
up.
We appreciate
You
it.
did a great job.
He's a
Yeah,
very
nice,
patient
nicely
Very
done.
patient, we appreciate that.
Enjoy your hammock.
Yeah. So let's wrap our heads around this for a second. Could we pass an ordinance that required them to have their propane tanks inspected by the fire chief, or is that or I wish the health agent maybe we so I mean this is kind of it's almost a different issue. It's the same issue, but but if we release food trucks, we won't be able to talk about it.
Well, if you had a plan, you could say required. In ordinance, we couldn't bring it back as an ordinance for that particular item.
Right. I mean, I'm
If
almost.
you want to leave it on the agenda till the next meeting and see if you can come up with something, that may be a best to go.
Well, here's another thought. I mean, are we not just releasing food truck ordinance? Are we gonna get rid of the mobile vendor thing completely? Because remember that mobile vendor, nobody gets it. Nobody, like, since the fireworks don't happen anymore, nobody has gotten a mobile vendor permit. So.
I don't think we should get rid of it because I'm not sure that we'll never have fireworks again.
Or another event that would be similar.
Right.
It just seems to scratch it, maybe. I don't see it as completely never again, so.
Yeah, no, I don't necessarily think it's gonna be never again either. But I just also don't know if anybody's pulling those permits for $100 to go sell, like whizzy things.
You know what's gonna end up happening? Is that you're gonna start to have those food truck Fridays with the music and someone will eventually be like, kids would be excited to stay longer with that. I see it
Yeah.
happening in the future.
And have other mobile stuff there.
I have my grocery cart ready.
Do you really?
No, it's not gonna be
I just
me.
and then that makes me go back to like it's weird that you need to have a $100 permit to sell balloons, but you don't need a permit from the city to sell food at the food truck.
Yeah.
Doesn't that seem strange? They're like, oh, you're selling balloons? Well, you got to pay $100 for a permit, a license. But you're selling food? Well, no, you just have to go through the health agent and pay whatever it is, $50.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
That doesn't seem,
does that seem crazy?
that doesn't seem fair.
Right. So I don't so maybe that's a whole separate discussion that we'd look at the mobile vendor ordinance and like about the fees and the restrictions on that. And we say, well, food trucks are regulated by the health department. What I would like to do, I'm going to send. Can we agree to this? Can I send Chief Motter an email asking him what he thinks the best course of action is for us to make his inspection
Sounds like a
part
good
of the
plan.
process,
Sounds like a good plan.
and then cross-check that with Jackie Duda, to see, hey,
Before we
Jackie,
do
can you send them over to, once you're done with your inspection, can you send them over to the chief, or maybe have let them know when you're doing the inspection?
That sounds like a great plan.
Is that fair? Okay, I'll do that, and then we can get this off our agenda. Because that was one of the things I wanted to talk to you guys about. Because I was like, one was the propane tanks. The other one was like, how can we not have a license for a food truck, but you pay $100 for a grocery cart with balloons in it?
Yeah.
Right? Propane. Okay, so, and then I'll email Jackie Duda too. And then we can also, I mean, maybe we say that, the approved areas for food trucks in East Hampton are the municipal lot at 50 Payson and the lots behind the mills. I mean, we could just be as simple as that. That way, if someone tried to park there and a brick and mortar was upset, they could. It's actually, well, that's prohibited for a food truck to be there unless it's on private property. So we can go back to that as well. Discuss that. You guys maybe sit with that thought. Because I mean, every time I think about how we can reserve a spot for a food truck, I just go back and forth, and I can't. Other than restricting the parking all the time and having like some sort of sign-up schedule, I can't figure out how to make that work.
And
I'm not sure. I agree. It's a difficult job.
Yeah.
and I
Putting
guess
something in writing that says the lots are available all the time, why do we need to put it in writing? Can't we
Not
just
necessarily.
Leave it open and let people come and do it, and if they choose not to do it, then okay.
Yeah, that's. I mean, we could take that approach where we'd say, we don't
But they-
set any parking regulations until it becomes a
unless
problem.
the only, I guess the only ban, which lots is?
This one?
This one in.
The mills.
The mills, so we would be selecting lots.
We could say food trucks are.
And that's a small lot over there.
Oh, that's way too
It's a
small.
small lot.
Yeah, way too small. It's always full.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I have is that if someone wanted to put a food truck in the industrial zone to come try to get lunchtime crowds,
That's not a bad idea,
that,
actually.
that's cutting that out if we limit.
But that
Private
might be on private property.
On private property. And there really is no, is there a lot of parking there?
Like,
The mill industrial zone? Or
Well, the-
in the industrial park?
I was thinking in the industrial park
I think an industrial park I think that's all private,
there. Okay.
except for the main road.
Okay.
So,
Well,
I mean,
that road would be the same as this road,
right.
so it wouldn't be allowed.
It wouldn't be allowed on the road, but they could pull into the parking lot.
Okay.
Parking, who's parking?
Well, wherever they were selling their goods, like, so whatever company they wanted to try to sell to, I guess. All right, so food trucks, and this will just be like a sample parking restriction, and we can get feedback from it. I mean, and this seems like it'd be pretty easy. And we could also put that in, like, with barring approval from such and such. Something like that. Okay. All right, that's good. So I'll do those things for food trucks. And we heard about sign ordinances. Where are we with plastic bags?
Plastic bags.
That seems like ancient history.
I know.
And I have all my stuff. I'm so excited. I have.
Yeah, we had where we had left that conversation off was how do we want to move forward? Do we want to encourage, our last conversation with the three of us was starting with smaller steps like requiring stores that give out the bags to have the recycling bins there and have different options. But when JP and I were meeting, we were talking about whether or not to charge for plastic bags and those decisions, and I still don't have a strong feeling about which way to go on it.
Right.
With not having the public buy-in with the art, the ECA Plus, it's just a very different
Right.
how to actually get that moving forward. So I'm still. At one point, I was like, "Let's just forget it." JP was like, "No."
Well, I mean,
Come
so
too far for that.
I feel like maybe this is increment. I think we talked about I'm trying to filter back here. We had talked about like an incremental approach, right?
Yeah.
Saying that maybe the beginning we looked at recycling bins for businesses, not restaurants, but like businesses like CVS and other, maybe Big E's or other places that have a high volume of these, having a recycling receptacle available. And then I think we talked about signage too.
You did.
So, and I wonder, I think we can. I think we can require by ordinance that businesses that use this type of plastic bag have a visible sign that states, you know, please recycle your bag, please use reusable bags or something like that. The city of East Hampton suggests, or something like that. I mean, some people might think that that's governmental overreach.
What's saying you can't use plastic bags?
I mean, it's less
Sign.
overreach than saying no, you don't get to use them, right?
It's significantly less overreach.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure it's overreach to have a plastic bag.
Okay.
Or to use the eco-friendly bags, if the science supports it. That
Right,
was the
yeah.
question that I think we
We kind of struggled
were
with
a little bit stuck on was, does the science support it?
Right.
But, and are they available? You know, because, you know, the Big E's green bag, right? I feel like it said something like eco something, but that bag is not biodegradable. It's just made from recycled
But there
plastic.
are other bags that are biodegradable.
Right. Corn starch bags, which apparently aren't as strong.
I think are they economically the same?
I think economically similar.
Were you here, I just found the notes from the meeting from the 8th. Was that the meeting when the cashier from Big East
That was the
came in?
notes that
Was-
Oh,
it
no.
was the meeting where you were at.
I wasn't there.
Okay,
Salem
I
was
found the
absent.
notes.
Oh, good.
You found the minute. You
Oh,
found
good,
the
good,
notes.
good.
Oh.
Great. So, okay, Alexandria Moynihan. She said she's worried that, okay, at Big E's, they already sell canvas bags and they also offer plastic and paper. But she has noticed as a cashier, a lot of people coming to East Hampton from Northampton because they don't want to have to deal with the paper bags. Like that's something that customers are
Yeah.
telling her.
Interesting.
And that about a quarter of their customers bring cloth bags in. She personally finds them to be very disgusting because they don't clean them.
She said, well, I think to be specific, she said about 10% of the bags don't get cleaned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're disgusting.
Right.
The other 90%
Oh,
are
okay. Yeah.
So, yeah, some percentage of the bags will not be cleaned.
Well, some percentage of
We
people,
go
it's
to-
about 10%
we go
of
to
people aren't very
canvas-
clean, so.
Canvas bags. What are you gonna do?
And so then she talked about how Big E's already does the 5-cent coupon for people with reusable bags, and using that as a reward seems to be really a good marketing for them.
That's good. I
And
didn't
wanted
realize
to
they did that.
see if any other stores would be willing to take on that kind of a challenge by encouraging people to use that. And I do think you could do that in a realm of, there are a lot of businesses that currently would be wanting to do that just
Mhm.
because of who their population is. So, you know, Big E's, if you bring your own bags in, they'll take a nickel and give you a nickel credit on your receipt that then you can put into one of the different community bins of where that nickel is gonna go. And then the store matches that at the end of each month of how many donations they got for that.
Huh.
So she was saying that she thinks that might be a more friendly approach to
Right.
take it forward with. But
I think that's great, but I don't think that's something we don't legislate that. That's something that I think is organic. That you know, a good like a well-run store like Big E's, that they do that on their own. I think you know the part where we would come in, where we legislate is all right. Well, this is great, but you know maybe having a place where people take their ones that they've used for a while, they're kind of dirty, and they can recycle them. You know, so they can be turned into new plastic bags. You know, legislate that part. Like they need to have. And then and maybe the sign or maybe not the sign. Maybe we just do the one piece, which is, hey, if you're using a certain volume of these bags, you need to have a receptacle. And we really encourage you to, you know, set up an incentive like and use Big E's as a model. Say, we would love to see this happen. And if they do it, they do. If not, not. Then we go back to the drawing board. If it seems like it's working, great. If not, then one of the things that can get legislated that we talked about was having a nickel charge that's legislated, and you know figuring that part out because I feel like a lot of places do, a lot of cities do that.
Yeah. And we had talked about how a lot of the stores felt that would be putting an undue burden on them to come up with
The money.
not the money, but if you were going to charge the people, then that would add an entire additional accounting process to the
right.
store to have to.
It's like additional taxes, basically.
Right.
How to figure that out. True.
Right.
Okay.
Why don't we invite the Chamber of Commerce to come
Okay.
give their suggestions on it and
That's
have
my
a
list.
talk with them about it?
I'll ask.
I think that makes great sense, but I'm not sure the affected parties are members of the chamber.
Okay.
Yeah, true. I mean, so
So
let's
would we want to
identify.
Looking
target
at Family
business?
Dollar, I'm not sure they're part of the chamber. Look at
Yeah.
CVS, I'm not sure they're part of the chamber. Rite Aid, I mean, I don't know, but I don't think,
Yeah.
see this as big
CVS.
civic, they're the outside
Mhm.
loan company, absentee landlord.
Yeah. True.
Type that,
True.
they're not, I mean, we're not gonna get, those are the people that businesses are gonna be affected by this.
Big time.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think that we would exempt restaurants,
Mhm.
you know, because they're not doing huge volume of these necessarily. And I'm trying to think, and it seems like they have a legitimate use for these things. You know, if you're bringing soup home, you don't want that in a cloth bag necessarily. So can we brainstorm really quick? Family Dollar, CVS, Rite Aid. Are there any other? How about the convenience stores? Do they use these? Like that convenience store and the one on College Highway, they do. So
All
I
the
think,
C-stores,
yeah, convenience stores.
Probably have to get Cumberland Farms.
Well, now that they're coming, so.
7-Eleven.
Oh. 7-Eleven. Okay. And like all these, I mean, really, at the end of the day, all these.
Our little, the little store at the end of Cottage Street.
That convenience store?
There's another convenience
Yeah,
store.
just
It has
two. Yeah.
Blocking the name.
It's like Main Street Variety or something.
Variety?
Or Cottage Street
Cottage
Variety.
Street Variety.
At the end of the day,
An invitation list.
really, I think the people that would
And there's
be.
a little C-store right here.
Yeah. How about liquor stores? Do they use? No, they usually use paper,
They
right?
usually use paper bags.
Yeah.
Or like a flat plastic bag.
Yeah. So these, you know, when I look at these and I'm like, none of these would be hit hard if they had to have a recycling thing.
Yeah.
You know, other than the convenience stores, it might be like, but I mean, think about it. It's a cardboard box with with a garbage bag in it. That's all you need. We would need to.
Where are they gonna put it, inside or outside? They're gonna put it
Inside.
Inside.
Yeah.
So it's gonna take up some retail space.
Well, it wouldn't even necessarily have to. They could have it behind the counter.
And who's gonna recycle the stuff
That's the
in it?
question. How do we know they're going to recycle it and they're not going to dump it in the pond?
I don't think we can enforce that. I mean, the pond, yes, but in
Yeah.
terms of
Yeah, where they actually.
everyone takes them to Big Y.
Okay, so you know what?
Where
I'm
does
gonna.
everyone take them? is my
That's a good question.
So, I mean, if there isn't a place that we know to recommend that you're gonna take them, then.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Doesn't make
then
any
it doesn't make any
sense to go
sense.
there.
I'll look into that.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a list of stuff to do. So I mean, do you guys, are you opposed to continuing this? Here's my thought. My thought is that we move forward one piece at a time,
Okay.
and that we look at the recycling piece first. I feel like that's one of the less intrusive,
Mhm.
and then we can, you know, as we move on and we see how it unfolds, maybe we can look at the signage piece. Unless you feel like.
I think if you're gonna do recycle the bags, maybe a
The
signage
signage
piece
at the
would
same time.
Kind of fit
Yeah.
at the same time, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
That's
If you're
fine.
not gonna bite the bullet and say, hey, this is what
No
we're gonna
plastic
do,
bags.
and
Yeah.
But with the signage piece, wouldn't we need money for that?
No, we wouldn't necessarily require them
It's
to
like-
have
I
any
think it's like
particular.
I think it's like $100 if you're talking a small sign with those stickers.
Or
Yeah,
even.
but I mean,
or-
would we have to get that money from city council, from the mayor?
No, oh, I don't think we would make the signs. I think we could say what needs to be on the sign, and we could have each store do. I mean, even like say one of these convenience stores, they might do it on a printer and put it on their door.
Listen, I don't wanna be tacky about it, but a nice uniform
Yeah.
package kind of program for a couple $100 probably would make a lot of sense as opposed to
We'll have to ask.
different type, style print, different
Yeah,
size,
well,
different boldness, different
we'll have to
tape
ask
up
the
to
lawyer.
the window somewhere.
And that's where I
We're
feel
not-
like
that
we
would
have
make it
4
really
high schools
tacky.
all with graphic arts
Right?
classes, to have a competition among the students to come up with that final
That'd be
sign.
so great.
But that's where that's really,
That would be great, but I'm gonna ask Jack. I'm gonna have to ask him. Can we legislate that they buy something?
yeah.
I don't know if we can. To be in compliance. Like a uniform thing that we design, can we legislate that they buy it? That they'd have to pay for it? I don't know the answer to
It
that
could be as
question.
very simple as there has, as some sort of permit, and there's a small fee, and the fee covers the cost.
It covers the cost of the sign.
Of this, and you need a permit if you're gonna use a plastic bag, I don't know.
Okay. Well, why not, I'll let you tackle that part of it.
I can look into that part.
And I'm gonna email the chief about propane. I'm gonna email Jackie Duda about, the propane as well, like how she can coordinate with the fire chief. Look at the food truck sample parking restriction for all marked parking spaces in the city, other than this parking lot and the back parking lot. I will look into where the plastic bags will get recycled, but I will let you figure out the sign piece of it. And would you like any piece of this plastic bag?
No. It's just the busiest 2 weeks of my semester
Okay.
right now. I'm like, no.
All right, fair. Yeah, me too. Right, my grades closed today, so I have about stack about 10 times the size that I have to grade tonight. Yeah, that's fine.
Good.
All right, good. I feel good. Let's
Move to adjourn.
we have a second.
Okay, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.